She said, "If you can beat me in the casino, I'll marry you." Everyone laughed. Everyone, except him. He wasn't rich. He wasn't famous. He was just the janitor who mopped her company floors. But when he sat down at that poker table, the whole room went silent. You ever met someone whose calm makes even chaos nervous? That was Malcolm Reed. And that night, under the golden lights of the Davenport Casino, the game wasn't just about money. It was about dignity. Every night at exactly 10 p.m., when the city lights of Atlanta flickered like restless stars, a man named Malcolm Reed would push his cleaning cart through the glass doors of Davenport Industries, a place where the air smelled like money and ambition. The lobby floor gleamed like liquid gold. The walls were mirrors, reflecting the pride of a company that ruled half the city's economy. Everyone who walked these halls wore $1,000 shoes and spoke in the language of power. Everyone, except Malcolm. He wore old sneakers, a faded uniform, and a calmness that unsettled even the security guards who nodded at him each night. He rarely spoke, never bragged, never complained. His world was quiet, the faint squeak of the mop, the low hum of the elevators, and sometimes the blues songs whispering in his earphones. He wasn't invisible, but he had mastered the art of being unnoticed. Most people didn't even know his name. To them, he was just the janitor, the man who appeared after they left, who erased their coffee stains and polished their reflections before morning came. But if anyone had taken the time to look closer, they might have seen it, the way his eyes lingered on the gold casino poster that hung in the lobby every November. Davenport Annual Charity Casino Gala, hosted by CEO Victoria Hale, every year. The event filled the building with laughter, champagne, and pride. And every year, Malcolm would quietly mop around the glitter and confetti that came after it. But this time, something about the poster made him stop longer than usual. The golden lights, the poker table, the words, "Test your luck." He smiled faintly, not the smile of amusement, but of memory. Once upon a time, luck had been his closest friend. Years ago, before the uniform, before the night shifts, Malcolm had sat in rooms that smelled of smoke and whiskey, with cards in his hands and fire in his eyes. Back then, people didn't call him Malcolm Reed. They called him Ace, the underground poker legend who could read a bluff faster than a heartbeat. But one night changed everything. The night he lost the woman he loved because of a game he should have walked away from. After that, the cards turned cold. And so did his heart. So now, he mopped floors. Not because he couldn't do more, but because peace was all he wanted. As midnight approached, Malcolm wheeled his cart past the 42nd floor conference room. The city skyline stretched beyond the glass like a sea of light. He paused, as he always did, at the end of the corridor. There, a large chessboard sat on a marble table beside a mini casino display, a symbol of Davenport's pride in strategy and risk. He'd seen executives toy with those games countless times, laughing, betting, pretending they understood risk. But to Malcolm, true risk wasn't in losing money. It was in losing yourself. He leaned against his mop handle, gazing out the window. Somewhere down there, people were still chasing fortune, dice rolling, cards shuffling, promises breaking. He used to be one of them. "Hey, Reed!" called a voice. It was Eddie, the night guard. "You see the boss lady's big event tomorrow?" Malcolm nodded. "Yeah, whole city's coming." Eddie chuckled. "You ever wonder what it's like up there? Fancy tables, silk dresses, the kind of people who don't spill their coffee on purpose?" Malcolm smiled, soft and distant. "Doesn't matter what table you sit at, Eddie. Every game's got the same rules. You win some, you lose some." Eddie laughed. "Man, you talk like a preacher sometimes." But when Eddie left, Malcolm stayed still, his gaze on that poker poster again. There was something poetic about it, the irony of fate. He'd once gambled everything he had for love. Now he was cleaning the floors where other people gambled for entertainment. He walked toward the reflection in the window. An aging man, late 40s, dark skin glistening under fluorescent lights, eyes steady like still water. The kind of eyes that had seen storms and survived. He looked down at the silver bracelet on his wrist. It was slightly tarnished, engraved with a single name, Elaine, his late wife, his reminder of what truly mattered. By 2 a.m., the building was silent again. The world of power had gone to sleep, and the world of the forgotten had awakened. Malcolm moved from floor to floor, cleaning conference rooms filled with traces of ambition, empty coffee cups, torn paper notes, and sometimes half-eaten food left by men who made millions. In the CEO's office, a cathedral of glass and gold, he paused. On her desk lay the casino invitation, embossed with her signature. Victoria Hale. The name carried weight, a woman known for breaking markets and egos alike. The media called her the Queen of Diamonds, and she loved the title. Malcolm studied the gold foil edges of the card, then placed it neatly back. He didn't belong in her world, but fate, that mischievous dealer, was already shuffling the cards for a game neither of them could avoid. When the clock struck 3, Malcolm took his final break. He sat on a bench outside the building, under the faint hum of streetlights. The air was cool, quiet. From inside his pocket, he pulled a single poker chip, old, cracked, faded red, the last one he'd ever kept. He twirled it between his fingers and whispered to himself, "Some games never end. They just wait for you to sit down again." He had no idea that in less than 24 hours he'd be sitting across from Victoria Hale herself, under the golden lights of Davenport Casino, and the world would finally remember the name Malcolm Reed. If Malcolm Reed was the silence that filled the night, Victoria Hale was the noise that ruled the day. At just 31, she was the youngest CEO in Davenport Industries' history, fierce, brilliant, and unapologetically proud of it. Her name appeared in magazines, her interviews went viral, and her voice carried the kind of authority that made people listen even when they didn't want to. To the world, she was the Queen of Diamonds, beautiful, sharp, and impossible to beat. And tonight, she would remind everyone why. The Grand ballroom of the Davenport Casino Tower glittered like a crown under 1,000 golden lights. Velvet curtains draped the walls, and the sound of laughter mixed with the faint clinking of champagne glasses. Politicians, celebrities, and investors filled the tables. Cameras flashed. Waiters moved like ghosts between the crowd. At the center of it all sat Victoria Hale, in a backless silver gown, a diamond bracelet circling her wrist like power itself. Her smile could cut through glass. She leaned back in her chair, surrounded by business executives and socialites, her fingers toying with a stack of poker chips. The annual charity casino gala wasn't just about raising money. It was about dominance. About who could play the game and who could own it. And Victoria, she always owned it. "All right, gentlemen," she said, swirling her wine glass. "Same bet as every year. If you can beat me in 3 moves, I'll double your donation personally." The table erupted in laughter and applause. The cameras turned toward her. She smirked. "And if I win, well, you'll just have to post about it on your company socials." It was all fun, harmless, glittering fun. But behind her charming smile lay something else, the need to control. To never lose. For Victoria, every game was personal. Her late father had built Davenport Industries with sweat and stubborn pride, and after his death, she'd fought her way through a boardroom full of men who thought her too young, too emotional, too female to lead. Now every victory, even at a poker table, was proof that she was born to rule. "Who's next?" she said, tossing her hair over one shoulder. A nervous intern stepped forward, trembling as he sat across from her. The crowd cheered him on, chanting his name. 3 moves later, he was broke. She smiled, shook his hand, and said sweetly, "Maybe next year." By midnight, she'd beaten a dozen challengers. Every win added to her legend, and every loss, well, there were none. The announcer's voice echoed through the ballroom. "Ladies and gentlemen, the Queen of Diamonds remains undefeated." Victoria raised her glass in mock modesty. "It's not luck," she said. "It's skill." The crowd laughed, but not everyone found it funny. At the edge of the ballroom, the janitorial staff began preparing to clean once the guests left. Among them was Malcolm Reed, who had been called in earlier due to the size of the event. He stayed near the doors, quiet, unnoticed, just another shadow in the glittering room. But from where he stood, he could see everything. Victoria Hale, confident, radiant, untouchable, surrounded by people who worshipped her like a goddess of luck. He had no intention of interrupting her world. He'd just clean up when it was over. But fate doesn't ask for permission. As Victoria finished another game, her eyes drifted lazily across the room, and then stopped. The janitor. Tall, calm, dark skin glowing faintly under the chandeliers. He wasn't clapping or smiling. He was just watching, steady, unreadable. For a brief second, she felt something unfamiliar, not attraction, not threat, just curiosity. "Hey!" she called, her voice slicing through the music. "You there, janitor!" The room turned. The laughter quieted. Malcolm froze, startled. Victoria smirked. "Come on, don't be shy. You've been watching all night." "Think you could beat me?" The crowd laughed again. Someone shouted, "Give him a chance!" Eddie, the night guard, tried to wave him off from the corner, mouthing, "Don't do it." But Malcolm just stood there, calm as ever. He gave a small, respectful nod and replied quietly, "You said anyone could play, right?" A ripple of surprise moved through the crowd. Victoria raised an eyebrow. "That's right, but fair warning, I don't go easy on anyone, no matter the uniform." He walked forward, slow and steady, each step echoing against the marble. When he reached the table, he placed his mop gently against a chair and sat down across from her. The Queen of Diamonds met the man who cleaned gold floors. The casino fell silent, and as the dealer shuffled the cards, no one, not even Victoria, Hale, knew that she had just invited fate itself to sit at her table. The casino lights shimmered like molten gold as Malcolm Reed took his seat across from Victoria Hale, a janitor, sitting where no one of his kind ever dared. The laughter had quieted, replaced by a strange electric silence, the kind that makes even air feel heavy. Victoria leaned forward, her diamond bracelet catching the light. "You sure about this?" she asked, smirking. "The stakes aren't small." Malcolm met her gaze calmly. "Neither are the lessons," he said softly. A murmur spread through the room. The dealer, unsure whether to continue, looked at Victoria for a nod. She gave one, still smiling, still confident, but something in Malcolm's tone made her uneasy. "All right," she said. 3 rounds, beat me once, and I'll double the janitorial staff's salary for a month." A few people chuckled. It was meant as a joke, but for Malcolm it wasn't funny. He simply nodded. "Then let's play." The dealer began to shuffle. The cards whispered against the table, the sound crisp and clean. Victoria's posture was perfect, straight-backed, poised, practiced. She'd been playing poker since her father taught her in his office, long before she became CEO. Malcolm's posture, on the other hand, was relaxed. His hands rested lightly on the table. No tension, no showmanship. Just silence, she thought. He looked nervous. He thought she looked distracted. The first round began. Victoria's eyes flicked over her cards. A queen and a 10 of hearts. She smiled, Malcolm looked at his, unreadable. The game moved quickly. The bets rose. The crowd leaned in. Victoria played with precision, her strategy sharp, her expression confident. When she won the first round, the room erupted in applause. She looked at Malcolm and said, half teasing, "Don't worry, beginner's luck doesn't last." But Malcolm didn't flinch. He didn't smile, didn't frown. He just nodded once and said quietly, "I'm not a beginner." Something about the way he said it made the laughter fade. The dealer reshuffled for round two. Victoria tapped her nails on the table, her smirk returning. "Let's see what you got, Janitor." He picked up his cards slowly, as if they weighed more than paper. The way his fingers moved, gentle, deliberate, it was like watching a man who'd done this his entire life. Victoria didn't notice it yet, but the room did. Something had changed. The crowd leaned closer. The music softened. Even the casino. Lights seemed to dim around them. Each move Malcolm made was quiet, but precise. He didn't hesitate. He didn't chase luck. He calculated. He wasn't playing the cards. He was playing her. When the second round ended, Victoria's confidence cracked for the first time. Malcolm had folded early, strategically, forcing her to overplay her hand. He'd lost the round, but won the crowd's curiosity. Victoria frowned. "You could have stayed in. You had a chance." He looked at her, eyes calm, and said, "Sometimes walking away is the best way to see who's really winning." The crowd went silent again. Victoria didn't like that answer. Not because it was wrong, but because it was right. As the dealer prepared the third round, the tension grew thick. Victoria's heartbeat quickened. She wasn't used to this, someone turning her own game into a mirror. Across from her, Malcolm sat perfectly still. The faint reflection of the cards danced in his eyes. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't proud. He was focused. And though no one knew it, this wasn't his first casino table. Long before Davenport, long before tragedy, Malcolm Reed had been a man, known in Chicago's underground casinos as the Phantom Player, the man who never spoke but never lost. But that was another life. A life he'd buried. Now fate had unearthed it, with Victoria Hale as its unknowing opponent. The dealer placed the final cards down. Malcolm's hand hovered above them. Calm, steady, deliberate. Victoria smirked again, trying to regain control. "Don't tell me you're nervous." Malcolm looked up at her and whispered, "I stopped being nervous the day I lost everything I couldn't win back." The dealer dealt. The cards landed. 3 moves later, the Queen of Diamonds was about to lose her crown. The air inside the casino had changed. Moments ago, it had been filled with laughter and champagne bubbles. Now it was quiet, so quiet you could hear the faint rustle of cards sliding across the green velvet table. All eyes were locked on. Them, Victoria Hale, the undefeated queen, and Malcolm Reed, the janitor who had no business sitting across from her. The dealer dealt the final hand. 2 cards each. Victoria's red lips curled into a smirk. "Final round," she said. "Let's make it interesting." Malcolm nodded. "It already is." The dealer's hands moved like a magician's, laying the first 3 community cards on the table. Move 1. Victoria raised her bet, bold, confident, her diamonds gleaming under the light. Malcolm called without a word. He didn't blink. He didn't look at his cards again. He just knew. The crowd leaned closer. There was something different about him now. Something magnetic, unexplainable. Every breath, every glance, every tiny movement was controlled. Victoria tossed her hair back, eyes flashing. "You're calm for someone about to lose." Malcolm's voice was barely above a whisper. "People only lose when they think the game's about cards." Move 2. The 4th card hit the table. Victoria's pulse quickened. She had a strong hand, a full house. She pushed her chips forward, doubling the bet. Gasps rippled through the crowd, but Malcolm didn't even look. He simply matched it. His fingers brushed the poker chip like an artist adding a final stroke to his masterpiece. A bead of sweat rolled down the dealer's neck. No one dared speak. Victoria studied his face, searching for a crack, a tell, anything. But his expression was carved from calm, unshakable, unreadable. "You really think you can beat me?" she asked, half laughing, half trembling. He looked at her, and for the first time, his eyes weren't just calm. They were sad. "I'm not here to beat you," he said softly. "I'm here to remind you, the house doesn't always win. Move." 3. The final card. The river. It flipped, and the room froze. Victoria's confident smirk faltered. Her full house just turned worthless. Malcolm's silent hand had become the unbeatable one, a royal flush. He leaned back, the faintest hint of a smile forming. Then gently he placed his cards face up. Gasps filled the air. The crowd erupted in disbelief. The Queen of Diamonds had fallen, in 3 moves. Victoria sat still, her face pale under the golden light. For the first time in years, she had no words. Malcolm stood, slow and calm, and said quietly, "The thing about luck, Miss Hale, it's only real if you don't depend on it." He gathered his mop from beside the chair, nodded respectfully, and walked away. No victory dance, no gloating, just peace. And as he disappeared through the golden doors, the entire casino stayed, silent, the sound of his footsteps echoing like truth. The night after the casino game, the city couldn't stop talking. The janitor beat the CEO. It was everywhere, whispered in boardrooms, joked about in cafes, replayed in the minds of everyone who saw it. But for Victoria Hale, it wasn't a joke. It was a mirror. She hadn't lost just a game. She'd lost control, pride, and the illusion that power made her untouchable. For the first time, she couldn't stop thinking about the man who walked away without even looking back. Who was he? A few days later, she found him. In the same hallway he'd cleaned for years, pushing his mop in silence. When he saw her, he paused. No arrogance, no revenge, just that same quiet calm. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly. "I came to say thank you," she replied, "and to ask, who taught you to play like that?" He smiled faintly. "Life did. Took everything from me until I learned the only rule that matters. You can't bluff the truth." Victoria's eyes softened. "You could have stayed. You could have let me know who you were." "I didn't need to," he said. "You already learned what you were supposed to." She looked down, ashamed, yet changed. For the first time, she understood. Respect wasn't built on wealth. It was built on worth. As she turned to leave, she stopped and said, "You know, that night, I promised to marry whoever beat me." Malcolm chuckled quietly. "You don't owe me that. You just owe yourself honesty." She smiled, not as a CEO, not as the Queen of Diamonds, but as a human. Weeks later, a new name appeared on Davenport Industries' internal list, Malcolm Reed, strategic advisor. He still cleaned sometimes, by choice. He said it reminded him of where peace truly lives, not on the casino floor, but in quiet hearts. And every night, as the city glowed beneath the glass towers, the janitor who beat the CEO reminded the world, sometimes the richest person in the room is the one who stopped chasing money. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because sometimes the most powerful stories come from the people nobody notices.